Mark and I were living in Coventry at the time, and we'd just had our 2 children. And the reason we lived in Coventry was because it was right in the middle of the country and it was very easy to go somewhere else from Coventry. But then we realised that it wasn't really where we wanted to be, where we wanted to live. So we started to look around. We weren't city people and didn't really appreciate all the things that came with living in a city. So Mark used to live here when he was little. His dad was in the RAF, so he lived for a couple of years and stayed in Laxdale. So we came for a holiday, had a look around. I fell in love with the place straight away, and we went home. That was in the September. We went home, sold our house in 10 days and moved up when we were here by the January. So and we moved into Glengrava. And it was fantastic, never looked back. We knew we wanted to have a different way of life to how we'd been in Coventry, but we weren't sure how that was going to be, whether it was going to be building our own house or taking on a croft or renovating somewhere. And the landlord of where we lived in the Glen told us about this croft, and we had a look at it, and it seemed to tick all the boxes. It needed a lot of work, it was quite neglected, but I suppose we were looking for a blank canvas in that way, and it just worked out really well, and we were really glad that somebody pointed it out to us actually. We sort of had ideas how it would be good to have a small holding, and we had an allotment in Coventry, so we knew about the growing food side of things. But looking after animals, we just started off with chickens, and they were nice and easy. And then in time, people helped us to move on to sheep, because we have a croft of 50 acres and lots of room for sheep. And that was just by taking on orphan lambs. And so we've just sort of learnt along the way, and people just help you out. That, you know, a lot of people go through the same learning process. And sheep are quite simple anyway, I think. So yeah, we've just picked it up as we've gone along. Like I said, when we first took it on, it was quite neglected. It hadn't been used for at least 10 years. We did a bit of initial fencing at the beginning, but there's a lot of fencing that needs doing, and it is a continual job. And we always knew that the best thing to do was to have a barn, and then all your tools are sheltered. You can have a quad bike to get out to different parts of the croft, but we can never afford it. We tried to sort of make do with patching up old sheds and having smaller buildings, but now that we've got to a position where we can afford a big investment, we've just gone all out, and it's really like carving new life into an old croft, upgrading the tracks, making access better, and just creating this big indoor space so that when the weather's bad, it doesn't stop you being able to do things. It's just going to be quite transformational, really. It wasn't a reason that we moved to Pairc, I don't think, the fact that it's a community-owned estate. Well, in fact, when we first moved here, it was pre-buyout, so it was still owned by a private landlord, and there were a lot of issues being worked through to do with a potential wind farm on the estate at the time. So the buyout happened while we were here, and I can't think that we were really that engaged with it at the time. It was just sort of happening in the background. But then when I started working for the Pairc Trust and realised the benefits that come with community ownership, as well as all the responsibilities as well, I think the fact that we're a community-owned estate will be a draw for people to come and live here, because it means different things to different people, but for me it means that nobody will be able to carry out a development in this area without coming to us as residents first. You know, a private landlord won't suddenly put a wind farm up without having the residents say so. So I think I think people want that security. They want to have some element of control of what happens in the place that they live, and community ownership can do that. And the health walks came about from an NHS initiative and working with a charity called Pairc for All, and there's a substantial amount of research that shows that the biggest health benefit to people is when they go from doing no exercise to doing some exercise. The increase and improvement is the biggest rise at that point. And walking is just such an easy way for people to get more active, that as soon as it was started on the island, we were just one area that started health walks. It's just really grown in popularity because I think it's so accessible. I think it's so easy for people. All you need is a comfy pair of shoes. You don't need any special equipment. And there's the social aspect as well. If you go to the gym and you're on a running machine, you can't really have a very good conversation. But if you're walking along the side of a beautiful loch and noticing the flowers and the birds, it's a beautiful experience, and it's easy to talk to people, and it makes people feel really positive. So it's been great. It's grown in popularity, and helps to bring people together. Well, obviously, with all the improvements we've been making to the croft, we have been putting that in place because with the children being older, it's an expensive time for parents. We just want to make it easier for us to be working parents for the next 10 to 15 years. So putting in the barn, making everything easier to manage on the croft is all part of getting our heads down and just carrying on working. But obviously we're excited about retirement when that might come along. Mark's a postman, so I think he can retire at 60, I think, but we very much see ourselves working the land, growing more for ourselves, expanding the flock of sheep. We only have sheep for our own consumption. We don't take lambs to the sale or anything like that yet, but that could be something that we could do once we've got the facilities to be able to do it. Well, I don't think we're doing anything new. I think people have been doing that here for generations, but we just might be doing it in a slightly different way. The use of polytunnels and polycrubs now rather than just vegetable beds is a simple example of that. But there's a lot of joy that comes from tending your own land and growing your own food, and being in nature and being in the weather and feeling connected to nature is very important.